And my name is Rida, and we're here to talk about how we, the youth, can change.
You want some change? I do have some in my pocket. You have to go do a whole talk about it.
No, Zahraa. I didn't mean change. I meant change, like the whole reason behind this.
Oh, right. I do know what that kind of change means. It means to make or become different. But what does this change mean for us, the generation of tomorrow?
Well, in my opinion, it means making the world a better place for us all.
But Rida, how can we truly make a change?
Well, we can usually follow a simple three-step plan. 1, understanding the issue, 2, types of the issue, and 3, execution. So why don't we start with the issue of discrimination?
All right, so first we need to understand the issue. So let's start at the core.
Tighten those seatbelts, kids, because we're going to get into why people actually discriminate. So suppressives are created through a distorted mirror image they see in the suppressed. Essentially, they manifest their bad qualities into the suppressed.
School bully syndrome. You probably have heard of this before. The bully has some super sad childhood story that causes them to turn around and hurt others in order to hide their own insecurities.
But what happens to the bystanders? Well, it's actually their fault as well. The bullies don't have anything if there isn't anyone around to fear or follow them, so these bystanders are willing to be led and wishing for some order to be put in place, no matter if it's good or bad.
So this all makes sense, so we can move on to the next part of our plan, understanding the different types.
There are many different types of discrimination, such as disability, age, race, gender, and many more, but we'll focus on 3.
First of all, racial discrimination.
In one example, the representation of different races in the media is terribly different. The wording used by the media to describe horrific events is very dependent on the race of the victims and perpetrator.
Now that I think about it, this is so true. Here's an example of 2 magazine covers. Same magazine, just different situations.
But wait, before we analyze this, we need to understand one very important word, terrorist. This word is used very carelessly in the media and sometimes can be hard to even understand what it means.
So the real meaning of terrorist is a person who uses unlawful violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in political pursuit. So as you can see, there's nothing to do with race.
So here we have the magazines.
Wait, you know what, Rida?
Yeah, what?
I feel a game of I Spy coming on.
Honestly, sounds pretty good. I'll start. I spy with my little eye something that says 40 killed in Paris carnage.
That's so easy, Rida. It's right in the middle of the magazine on the left. My turn. I spy with my little eye something that says 49 murdered at prayer by Aussie.
That's kind of hard. I can't seem to find it. Where is it, Zahraa?
It's right there on the magazine on the right.
Whoa, that's so small. Anyway, my turn. I spy with my little eye something of a little baby.
Is it the picture of the little boy and his dad on the magazine on the right?
Correct. Now, we aren't trying to say that one of these perpetrators is a terrorist and the other is not. We believe they both are. But we're just trying to bring to your attention the different representation of these perpetrators in the media based on their race.
We also agree that the media is starting to change, but as you can see in these other examples, this is still an issue in the world.
So now that we understand the issue and have seen some examples of it in the real world, we can try to work and remove it from our daily lives.
So now let us divert our attention to this infographic provided by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives that shows the racial wage gaps in Canada, both in public and private sectors. So
now you may have realized that the wage gap is not just between genders, it's definitely between different races as well.
That's true. For every dollar a university-educated non-visible minority makes, a university-educated visible minority makes 88 cents in the public sector and 80 cents in the private sector.
Whoa, and a university-educated Aboriginal student makes even less. They make 86 cents in the public sector and 56 cents in the private sector.
Well, there is definitely a discrepancy there. So, the wage gap is usually an issue that is very gender-based. So, did you know that women are paid 26% less than a man doing the same job as her? This means that she is paid 74 cents for every $1 he makes.
Whoa, wait, actually? Well, that's kind of depressing.
Don't worry about it. Don't get so exasperated. On a happier note, Belgium has the lowest wage gap in the world of 1.1%.
What? That's so cool. Honestly, I'm sure we could do the same. Maybe by, I don't know, passing a legislation that enforces fair wages between men and women.
Totally. Along with this, it has been proven that men are more likely to get raises biasly and Belgium is working to eradicate this.
Along with this, you can see from this infographic provided by Stats Canada and many others listed below that there are many arguments that are not justified, such as women earn less because they work less hours than men.
Regardless of the argument, full-time working women only get 74 cents for every $1 a man makes.
So now that we know about this issue, we should try to remove it from our daily lives.
So now in the last 2 minutes, we're going to talk to you about another type of discrimination that isn't necessarily viewed as such, but it kind of is, bias.
But before we explain this, we wanted to recognize that we understand we both identify as female and Muslim, so we'll try to eradicate any bias we might have about the topic.
You see, bias is a huge issue because only one side of the story is portrayed. Bias can be found everywhere in the world and most probably is in this TED Talk. So I'm sure that every single one of you have been taught something that you don't necessarily agree with.
For example, history class. Show of hands, how many you have taken or are taking a history class at the moment?
Awesome, so you all should know your stuff. History is biased. For example, the indigenous community, the indigenous studies is a very new concept that has only started being taught in 2015, specifically the topic of residential schools.
But most of the time we're being taught by a teacher who has very little knowledge themselves of the indigenous culture, or are teaching through a textbook or a curriculum which we know are at least a bit biased.
But the bias can be found everywhere, especially with social media.
But the main reason about talking about bias is to allow you all to realize there's always two sides to every story and that you really don't have to believe everything you're taught.
Along with this, it's also important to realize that regardless of how much you disagree with an opinion, it does not give you the right to discriminate or be rude to a person who does.
Therefore, if you disagree with everything we've said today, then that's just fine. Just make sure if you want to express your opinion to put some respect on it.
Alright, so what's the point of this talk about discrimination?
Well, one important thing to realize is that there are many issues in the world, some obviously simpler than others, but discrimination is one that we can remove from our daily lives.
And if we really put our minds to it and let passion fuel the way, we can truly make a change, especially if we allow our differences to be our assets and not our liabilities.
So it's time for us to work together as a team, as a community, and make the world better for us and generations to come.
Let us be the first to follow the principle of the Iroquois community and not only preserve life for our kids or our grandkids, but for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you.